Up next on Way of the Renaissance Man, Educating America Conceptually, featuring Ed Thompson.
Welcome to the Way of the Renaissance Man podcast. This is a show about ideas, personal empowerment, and celebrating the rational life. Our goal is to help each other discover the tools needed to better focus our minds, integrate our thoughts with actions, and live the lives we really want. I'm your host, Jim Woods. Those of you who listen to the show regularly will understand that I'm all about philosophy and philosophical integration in my life. And today I'm speaking with a man whose mission is to help re-educate America conceptually. Ed Thompson, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you. Okay, so before we get into the nuts and bolts of what the project that we're so excited about talking about, we both have something in common. We're both lovers of the ideas of Ayn Rand.
We are.
Okay. And I know that when first time I read Atlas Shrugged, it was in college, and it totally remapped my mind, remapped my thinking. So what was your experience of that?
I came at it in a rather unique way.
Okay.
I discovered Ayn Rand on the Johnny Carson show in 1969.
Those are incredible appearances.
67, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, got the reading list. So the first book I read was, we call it fondly ITOE, which stands for Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology.
That's right.
Now, people think that is profound. It's not. Ayn Rand wrote in very understandable English language. I looked up two words, metaphysics and epistemology, and the rest is history. I read everything, and
that's
years ago.
Yeah, that's interesting that you would start with that, because I read that because I studied philosophy in college. That was my major, but I read that alongside reading other ideas about epistemology, and it was her ideas are quite different than the mainstream ideas on epistemology. And it questions your entire kind of worldview or how you're learning. And I'm not surprised that that's maybe the first thing you read, because that is the foundation of what you're working on right now.
Well, it was partially by chance, because I got the reading list the next day, and there were her books, and there was Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead and Read a Living. I didn't want to read a storybook, that's what I was thinking, right?
Right.
I wanted to learn about her philosophy, and that's the one that struck me as being more about it. But of course, having read everything, integrated. But philosophy has 5 branches: metaphysics, which is existence,
right,
epistemology, ethics, politics, and aesthetics. So, over time, you learn it all.
Yeah,
and integrate.
Well, that's the you said the magic. You said the magic word, because everyone knows that my 3 kind of premises are focus, integration, and then celebration. And the integration part is not just philosophic integration, but it's also integrating the philosophy with your life. It's not just about integrating the ideas. It's about living the integration. And that's the important thing about it. That's one of the keys to being a Renaissance man. You bring those ideas into your life, and when you do so, it enhances your life.
I'm celebrating right now with you.
There you go.
Okay, all these decades of learning and applying in my business life and my personal life and so forth. Yeah, this is the fruition.
This is the culmination, my man.
Well, I'm not done yet.
Okay.
People used to ask me, have I lived in New York all my life? And my answer is, not yet.
There you go. Okay, so let's jump right into that. So you are spearheading a project that I think is very important, because everyone knows that the education system, even if you're in the education system, it's messed up. But why is it messed up? Why are we churning out people that can't really think? Why can't Johnny think? So talk to us about what you're doing and how what your plans are to help change that.
Let me come at it backwards.
Okay.
As we look around, we see America in a downward spiral. Okay, we've gone from freedom to government controls to Bernie Sanders and socialism becoming respectable or semi-respectable in America, with Sanders getting within a hair's breadth of the nomination for the presidency of the United States. How do we account for this? Okay, we see all this evidence around us. Black Lives Matter. We see critical race theory and all this nonsense. And parents are starting to see it now that they've been exposed to the black box, what public schools, any schools for that matter, are all about. And the answer to Bernie Sanders and that whole phenomenon is it's not the politicians. They say cream rises to the top. Well, this is the reverse, right? This is the bottom of the barrel philosophically.
Right.
These kinds of people. But how, we have to ask, can a Bernie Sanders and all the others come about? It's not them. It's us. It's the electorate.
Right.
It's not these few people.
Yeah, we get what we deserve.
It's the millions and millions and millions of Americans who don't think philosophically. They know that critical race theory is wrong. I mean, you can see it. Everybody knows that it's wrong,
right,
except the people who are doing it, right?
Right.
But they can't really argue against it. So, my opinion is that it all begins in kindergarten. Right? That's when we begin to learn to conceptualize. I mean, yeah, you could argue that it's nursery school, and yes, parents have a lot to do with it and so forth. Right. But basically, that's when the child gets out.
They're of that age.
The Jesuits used to say, "Give me the child until he's 7. I'll give you the man." Right? And that is all critical, important. Furthermore, it's the educational establishment that is philosophically progressive. Mm-hmm. It's called progressive education.
Yeah.
And John Dewey is the father of progressive education, going back to the late 19th century, early 20th century. So what we need to do ultimately, so I'm going from what exists, to
right,
what do we need to do? What we need to do is reform the education system. The way to do that is to reform the teachers' colleges, to supplant or to get rid of progressive education philosophy and replace it with conceptual education.
It needs some real nourishment.
You need a real curriculum, a real educational philosophy. And it's a long road to hoe to get to that point.
Right.
But it's doable, and it's basically it's easy in a sense. A lot of work to doing it, but the principle is easy, right?
Right.
Basically, you start getting the curriculum into schools, and they can get into that, drive it up the lines.
Right. So tell me, like, what the kind of basis, what is the intellectual kind of nutshell of the approach? It's a conceptual approach, correct?
It is.
Okay. Talk to me about that.
Progressive education is anti-conception. And the proof of that, or a strong indicator of that, is dyslexia and ADD as relatively new diseases. I mean, they didn't exist decades ago. Right?
When I was growing up, no one ever had any ADD.
I never heard of it as a child growing up through high school or anything like that. So it is primarily, and I have to be careful to say not totally, but primarily a function of bad teaching. And the major portion of that is whole language reading instruction versus phonics reading instruction. Yeah. Phonics is the correct way. It is the only way. It's not the best way. It's the only way to teach children to read. I can show you kindergarten children reading in 3 months. I can show you first graders reading at a third grade level, where it's done right. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, the anti-conceptual part is that whole language reading instruction is like looking at Chinese pictographs and trying to remember thousands and thousands and thousands of words. There's only 27 letters in the alphabet.
Yeah, that's anti-conceptual. Right. It's like, I mean, you can only hold a certain amount of units in your mind at any one time.
Yeah, the Crow principle.
The Crow epistemology, exactly.
But there's 26 letters, but there's 44 phonemes. And those are the sounds that accommodate, like TH and so forth. Mm-hmm. Right? And from that we get 100,000 words or a million. I don't know,
a lot of different ideas.
And you can't do that by looking at pictograms. Right. It's anti-conceptual. So children start, boys especially, start to fidget.
Right.
And so they get diagnosed as ADD.
And they get drugged up too. Yeah.
And then they give them Ritalin.
Right.
So they
get
cause the
cocaine,
disease and then they drug them.
Yeah.
Right. So how is that
Yeah, I think people understand that, like, just based on that. I mean, if you've, I don't have any children, but I know many of my friends that do, and they're very concerned about it. They're you know, they're like, oh, we take the kid over to school, and you know, we don't know what's going on over there. Well, you know, they come home and they don't really know how to read very well. They don't know how to do math very well, and
How to spell.
you know, yeah, they can't spell. They can't even handwrite anymore. They don't do that. Don't teach that anymore. So
Writing is all important.
yes.
To quote Orson Welles, if you cannot write well, you cannot think well.
Exactly.
If you cannot think well, someone else will do your thinking for you. Isn't that what we see all around us today?
That's exactly right.
Right?
Yeah.
People who can't think. The education system is churning out leftist, addle-minded, well, of course that's a redundant statement, kids, right? You know, I can show you articles on this, the mentality of them. By the hundreds of, by the millions annually.
Right.
And that cannot be countered by anything that the Ayn Rand Institute is doing in the short term, right?
Right.
It needs to be, it all begins in kindergarten. Like always
Yeah, we got to start. I mean, we have to start. A, we have to start early. B, we have to start with the essentials, the concepts, because if you don't have the conceptual tools to make your way through reality,
right.
You're not going to be able to make your way through reality.
Sure, but I don't want to imply that we're going to be teaching metaphysics and epistemology in kindergarten and first grade.
Yeah, that's a little bit graduated.
Or even teaching concepts, right?
Right.
But the teachers in the educational establishment have to know what concepts are, right?
Right.
You know, man has a perceptual level and a conceptual level.
Right.
We every word in the language is a concept representing something out there.
Right.
And children can be and are being in certain areas taught logic, to think logically. I mean, we have our method of acquiring information is reason. Okay, the faculty, I should say.
Of course, yeah.
And the methodology is logic, the art of non-contradictory identification.
Yep.
Yeah, teach that to somebody in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Right. But you show them how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say
by demonstration.
We can't
So
like
if you're
explain
teaching a child how to read, basically you don't. You teach a child how to write. Right. You have a yellow pad, and and they write down the alphabet, and then they start writing words. Right. Well, writing is reading.
Right.
It's symbiotic. I mean, you can't do one without the other.
Right. Exactly.
You can't write without basically reading. And I can show you paragraphs from kindergarten students. They're childish,
right?
But they are articulate and without a single misspelling or syntax problem.
Right.
In a very simple level, but the kids that age can write. You can before 4 years old, a child can learn how to write.
You know, I think one of the things that I mean, this is not specific to what you're talking about, but I think a lot of, just in general, a lot of parents, a lot of the establishment, so to speak, education-wise, they underestimate what a person can do. They don't push a person to do better than they can. But when you see people doing, that's why I like the concept of a tiger mom in the Chinese culture, because the tiger mom demands that you do X, Y, and Z. And guess what? The kids rise to the occasion. That's why they're getting all the grades. That's why there's just a huge. That's why Harvard is working hard to keep so many Asians out, because they're the ones who qualify to get in. So tell me more about the project itself, where it's at, and also how you see it unfolding in the next, and then also tell us how we can help.
The project is really bifurcated. There's
What's the name of the project?
Okay.
Yeah.
The Ayn Rand Institute. I founded or sponsored the Conceptual Education Fellowship.
Conceptual Education Fellowship.
Remember
that.
The first fellow is Sam Weaver.
Okay.
He's a young fellow, lives in Florida, and you could work anywhere these days.
Yes.
And Sam is an intellectual. He's gone through our Objectivist Academic Center, so he's an expert at writing and so forth. He's studying the history of education and the current status of education, and applying, and this is now an application of Ayn Rand's philosophy, objectivism, to education. So education per se is not philosophy. But you need philosophy. You need to know how to think
Right.
in order to get it right, the logic and
Right.
the reason behind it. So there's the fellowship program, and then as an aside, which is more my direction because I'm not an employee of the Ayn Rand Institute,
Right.
but we're very close.
Yeah, you work together.
Yeah, I've been working with them for 20 years now, as a public outreach, introductions and so forth. But what I want to do is actually start a for-profit business, creating a curriculum with all the teachers' guides and so forth. And we have the ability to get teachers that have been Montessori trained to work on the project. So what I need from your audience somewhere out there is a CEO.
Okay, we're in search of a CEO,
I'm in search of a
who can
CEO.
handle things.
That would be a self-starter, with all the proper education and some background, but it has to be an entrepreneur type.
Right.
The kind of person who's going to go out there. Male or female, doesn't matter. And the idea is to create the curriculum, which is not a hard thing to do. It's out there, and it just needs to be
We'll
packaged
put it
properly.
together, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And then next year, get it into one school or two or three schools as a pilot project, and then the following year, expand on that, ultimately spread it across a whole
School districts, things like that. Yeah, yeah.
And then several school districts, and ultimately, or almost ultimately, is take over a whole state. You say take over, implement the pedagogy.
Yeah, we don't mean
in a
that. We
state.
don't mean that
Yeah,
literally
not
taking
like,
over, right?
right.
We mean that, yeah,
In the capitalist
in the
sense.
capital. Yeah, exactly. Meaning our ideas win the day because they're better.
For profit. All right. Now, when we institute this in a whole state, let me just state this. Sounds pie in the sky, doesn't it? I mean, this is grandiose.
Yes,
Well,
but it's been done before,
It's done
hasn't it?
before, yeah. You've been listening.
Yes.
Massachusetts, back 15, 20 years ago, I don't know, implemented the E.D. Hirsch program. E.D. Hirsch program is a classical education program. It's not perfect by any stretch, but it's good. Right?
Mm.
Within 5 years, the program became known as the Massachusetts Miracle. Right?
Yes, exactly.
And, so the idea is then to go from there, nationwide and so forth.
Right.
But what we need to do is drive this up to the teachers' colleges.
Right.
Okay? So while the activity is going from, K through 3 and on up and educating parents and teachers, at the lower level,
Right.
and also be finding followers, if you will, or admirers in the establishment,
Right.
and then working within it. Okay? But we need to change the philosophy. It's all about philosophy.
Right.
Progressive education is anti-mind, anti-conceptual, and that's why we have America we have today.
We're seeing the results in front of our eyes. Yeah. Well, it is an ambitious project, but nothing ever came about that was worthwhile without some strong ambition and some tough people like you.
It's the vision thing,
It's a
to
vision
coin a
thing.
phrase. It's the vision thing, and it's real. I have studied this for years, and as I've just given you some examples, it's been done on a watered-down basis, and we can do this.
Yes.
But education arena is I don't want to say it's a vacuum, but it's a partial vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum,
Yes.
right? Any entrepreneur is looking for a market. There's a demand for the proper form of education.
Exactly. I think that's a good place to stop. Thanks so much for being on the show.
My pleasure.
All right, thank you very much. So if you need more information, I'll have all of the links, all of your links on the website. So once again, thanks a lot. And if there's a CEO out there that wants to change the world with good ideas, give me a call.
Way of the Renaissance Man podcast and lifestyle website are copyrighted 2021 by Jim Woods. All rights reserved. For more great interviews and Renaissance Man resources, visit wayoftherenaissanceman.com.